Okay, so I've wanted to do this for a while now to talk a little bit about decompression, especially everyone knows how involved in the rescue community I am, and I know this comes up a lot. Hey, Franny, and incidentally, I'll try my best to keep an eye on the chat or the comment section. So if I miss you, I apologize. Just yell at me afterwards, shoot me a message, and if you have any questions that I might miss, I'll definitely get to you. So. Anyway, decompression is a topic that comes up a lot in the rescue community, whether a rescue is pulling a dog from a shelter and putting it into a foster home, or the dog is getting adopted, or dogs coming off transport, which is a whole nother set of circumstances that we often have to deal with as far as decompression goes and allowing a dog time to acclimate to a new environment. So, I want to talk about some of this stuff. And incidentally, I think it's like a 20-minute video. Let me just copy that link. I have like a 20-minute video on my Facebook, my YouTube channel as well about decompression. So I'm going to drop that link below. I have that in the comment section. So you guys could certainly take a look at that. I may talk about stuff tonight that I didn't talk in the video, or vice versa. So. At any rate, I have some comments that people dropped in my Facebook feed a little while ago as well, so I'll talk about them. One thing I want to mention, just superficially about decompression, is there is no formula. Okay, there is no exact formula for any dog to acclimate to a new environment. It is literally on an individual basis. And the things I'm going to be talking about now, it also doesn't apply to that happy-go-lucky, no care in the world dog that you could just pop in anywhere and the dog just acclimates to the environment, no issues at all. This is really for dogs that some behaviors may crop up, or maybe the dog has some anxiety that we have to do some things to allow that dog to, again, to acclimate not just to the environment, but are there other animals in the household, the family members, new handlers. There's all sorts of stuff that we have to consider. So there really is no formula. The purpose here is to offer some things that people can consider. And I know a lot of my rescue friends, I can't even tell you how many times, and anyone can attest to this, we'll give people, whether it's a foster or adopter, lists, and I often provide video of, especially if dogs are leaving my enrichment program and going to a foster or adopter, we give them as much information as possible to help them help the dog acclimate to the new environment. And at the end of the day, all we could do is provide information. Ultimately, it's up to the foster or the adopter to implement those things. Moreover, it's also their responsibility to let us know if other behaviors that crop up, so we can address them, because I can tell you firsthand experience, and it's not one dog, it's not two dogs, it's not dozens of dogs. Hundreds of times, dogs will exhibit behaviors in one environment and not exhibit them in another, or new behaviors will crop up in the new environment that no one's ever heard of before. So there's a lot that goes into this. So, hey, Florentina, nice to see you too. So first and foremost, I don't want to call this a myth, but for lack of a better word, let's call it the decompression myth that I think puts a lot of dogs in positions to fail, okay? And the myth is that we shouldn't do anything with the dog for 2 weeks, okay? Now, I know where that comes from, and so let me explain before everyone gets on my case. Yes, we don't want to overwhelm dogs. Right? We don't want to put dogs in overwhelming social situations. We don't want to have 87 family members come over, okay? We don't want to do things that are overwhelming to the dog. And this is where the individual dog comes into play, because what's overwhelming to one dog may not be overwhelming to another dog. Right? So it's an individual thing. And I'll tell you a story, and I'm not going to say when it happened or who it happened to. It's irrelevant. But it's something that's in my mind constantly, is a dog, and let's just call it a hypothetical, because I'll throw in some things here just to, for effect. So a dog is transported from one state to another state, is on a transport, let's say conservatively for 12 to 14 hours, right? If it's going along the East Coast, whether it's north to south or south to north. That's a lot for a lot of dogs to handle, right? So there's a level of anxiety for that dog coming off of transport. And then 87 people were invited over to the house to meet the new family member, right? Which is another overwhelming situation. And then all sorts of physical invasive things were done to the dog, whether it was trying to brush it, trying to give it a bath right away because it has the stink of transport on her or him. Or the dog is sent to the groomer, or you try to clip their nails or clean their ears, or any kind of potentially physically invasive behavior. They're just not good. You don't want to do that stuff. So that's where the don't do anything for 2 weeks comes into play, right? But we don't want to do nothing. We actually, in my opinion, quite the opposite will help that dog acclimate to a new environment. And a lot of these things are listed in my, I have a 7-day dog care challenge on my YouTube channel as well. In fact, I'll post, let me see if I can get that link real quick. Yeah, I'll post day 1. I'll try and get the other links as we're talking tonight, but, and somebody mentioned, and let me see if I can see who it was, Patrick Keenan, he made a really good point. You know, one of the first things we could do is a quiet place, right? First step is that dog needs to be introduced to her or his space of their own. I recommend crate training, and I don't care if it's a 12-week-old puppy or a 5-year-old adult dog. Crating a new dog is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to go about it, provided the dog is crate trained, obviously. Crate training is a whole nother topic of conversation. But having a safe place where the dog can be away from excitement, the daily hustle and bustle of the household is good for the dog. It's also safe, especially with rescue dogs or puppies. We don't know if they're housebroken. We don't know if they're going to chew on stuff. We don't know if they're going to get into trouble around the house. If there's other household pets involved, again, a whole nother topic of conversation of integrating dogs, and we'll talk about that in a little while because it's on my list. Having that safe place, you know, in my opinion, again, is a crate, right? Having that safe space to go to for feeding, for resting, especially if a dog is coming off transport, they probably haven't slept much. So having a nice, comfortable, cushy, quiet place to go is absolutely essential, and I agree with Patrick 100% on that. So going back to the myth of don't do anything for 2 weeks, right? This is where I kind of have a disconnect. Hey, Patricia. A disconnect or a different view, let's call it, because again, it's an individual dog thing. My personal view is to get that dog acclimated to your schedule as soon as possible, right? Now, again, we don't want to expose that dog to overwhelming situations. That's where crap goes wrong real fast, right? That's where bad things can happen. You know, in the first 24 hours of the dog's arrival, you don't want to go out to the local park where there's kids playing, a whole bunch of dogs going. You don't want to go to Home Depot. You don't want to bring the dog to a groomer. You don't want to do these potentially overwhelming things to the dog. But in your house, you do want to get your dog on your schedule right away. You do want to start working the dog every day. This is where a positive reinforcement protocol comes in handy. Even if it's just, you know, a couple of sits and downs and comes in the household where it's quiet, no distractions. Get that dog working for you. Have a lot of positive association with you as their new caregiver or handler. That's something you want to start doing right away. You don't want to, if you wait 2 or 3 weeks, I could tell you right now, if you're not working that dog every day in the comfort and privacy of your home where there's no distractions and no overwhelming stimulation, that dog's going to have 2 or 3 weeks to develop unwanted behaviors. So now you're going to be behind the curve, so to speak. So that's why I recommend, even if they're just little quick mini sessions throughout the day, a lot of positive reinforcement, teaching dogs, reinforcing behaviors they already know, or if you want, if the dog is up for it, teach some new behaviors with a lot of food, a lot of love, and depending on the dog, physical praise is one of my favorites. I love physical praise. I think it's one of the best forms of positive reinforcement that we can offer our dogs. Hey, Sue. So that again, food for thought. Walking, okay. I don't care what the behavior is, what the situation is, or what the dog is. Walking that is one of the best ways to establish a really good relationship with your dog. Now, with walks, this is where some balance comes into play, okay? And now I'm a huge proponent of walking. Everyone who's ever talked to me about training or behavior modification, walking is usually one of the first things that comes out of my mouth. But a walk can be overwhelming. So your walk might start out in your backyard and just kind of walk the perimeter of your property. You know, start slowly exposing your dog to your property outside. But you gotta do it. You gotta get the dog in motion. Oh, thanks, Lucero. They're available on my website. Adopt the Pitbull hats. Yeah, so you definitely want to walk. If you have to start slow, that's fine. Okay. Again, go in your backyard. Put the dog on a leash. And, you know, if you don't want to get too crazy with leash etiquette and leash training, that's okay. If the dog's pulling you around the yard and it doesn't know how to walk on the leash, that's fine. Don't worry about that right now. Just let the dog get out and be a dog. Sniff the property, get acclimated to the outside of your home. And then, if you want to go a little further on a walk, I don't recommend going 8 miles on day one. Okay? Walk up and down the block again, right? Provided you have a low distraction neighborhood. If you live in the city, that could be a little overwhelming. You know, I know dogs that it's you know, they're sent to cities, whether it's Manhattan or other big cities, where it's really hard to minimize distractions if you go outside, and the dog has to go outside. So that's where training and handling tools come in, where you want to have a secure handling tool, whether it's a martingale or, you know, one of those slip leads with the locking mechanisms on there, because some dogs, they could be flight risks, especially if they're coming from south to north and they've never been exposed to big city life and they've never seen a bus backfire on a New York City street. I mean, that could scare the crap out of anybody who's never seen it before. And anyone who's been to Manhattan knows exactly what I'm talking about. That big, you know, that freaks anyone out. Again, just some things to consider. So if you're in a regular suburb, start small. But start. Got to get them walking. You got to establish that relationship. And I could talk more about walks, but I think you get the idea. If you have to start in the yard, that's fine. If you have to go in the front yard, that's fine. If you can go 2 or 3 houses down and the dog starts feeling a little anxious, come back. And then tomorrow, go 4 houses down. And then 5 houses down. But do it. Get the dog walking, start establishing that relationship. Bring some yummy treats with you if you want. Nothing wrong with that. I don't care about using food as, especially on walks if there's distractions. It's a high value reward for the dog. It could help you distract the dog if it gets a little anxious or is uneasy about something. And again, trust your judgment. Trust what you're seeing. You don't need to be an expert in reading dog body language to see that they're uncomfortable. Okay, but start. Walk, okay? So, we're going to start working our dog every day, right? Get them on our schedule, and we're going to walk our dogs. Work and walk, right? Great way to establish relationship. It's a great way to help the dog acclimate to the new environment. It also helps the dog understand the rules of the house, which if we're just doing some little mini training sessions in the living room and going for short walks, those are the rules right now, right? That's better than no rules, because if there's no rules and there's no structure, the dog is going to develop her or his own, and that's where problems arise. So, hope that makes sense. And then again, always having that safe, quiet, cushy, comfy space for the dog to go to is important, okay? And then, if behaviors crop up, this is where, and I did a segment on my YouTube channel too. I think it was my friend Franny and Danielle. We did a thing on the foster rescue relationship, and I'll try and find the video. I don't have it handy, but that's where the relationship between the foster or adopter and the rescue comes in, and that communication. We have to communicate with each other, right? 6 months can't go by and then you lay this crap on the rescue where things could have been helped all along. So as a foster or adopter, you do have a responsibility to be communicative. Rescues are overwhelmed. They can't read your mind. No news is good news generally, right? At least that's been my perception of what I see going on. So even if it's the littlest thing, report it, talk about it. It's better to talk about something that's not a big deal than not talk about something that could turn into a huge issue. Make sense? All right, so I'm going to jump around a little bit. Let me see what I got on my list here, because I want to make sure I address these questions too. Patricia Lisa. How different does decompression take or look in varying dogs in rescue, and want to share to all new adopters who get their dogs from shelters as opposed to fostered or rescue dogs, since history is generally unknown but generally marked by abuse, neglect, lack of socialization, etc. It's a great question. It goes back to what I said earlier. It does vary by dog. We don't know. And if we don't know their history, that's why we do need to take things slow. That's why I'm saying, yeah, we don't want to do nothing. We want to start working and walking the dog, but little tiny increments. We don't want to overwhelm the dog, because those little tiny increments, they're going to disclose and uncover things to us where we can start getting to know the dog. Does that make sense? And, you know, when they are coming from a shelter atmosphere where we don't know their history, the foster or adopter, you may be the very first person that's actually observing and reporting any issues, good or bad. So it is important. That's why the relationship building is important. That's why it's important for us to have that responsibility and communicate that to the rescue of what we're finding, both good and bad, right? Think of it like an inventory. Businesses take inventory, right? They're finding out what sells and what doesn't sell, right? The rescues need to know that stuff. So that's why during this decompression period, we're gathering all of this information. I got to scroll down. I hear these beeps coming through, and hopefully I'm not missing anyone. All right. Well, if I miss you, I apologize. I'm not multitasking right now. So, what else? Okay. So the abuse, the neglect, the lack of socialization. I'll start with lack of socialization. Very common, and I see it more common down here since I moved to North Carolina from New Jersey. Socialization in a sense of dogs that have been exposed to just regular everyday stuff like going to the store, people out on walks, because, you know, it's country down here. A lot of wide open space. A lot of dogs grow up very loved and very cared for, but isolated. So they're not exposed to things that, you know, again, just going to the store, going to the pet store, bringing them to the vet, you know, things like that. They're isolated to big open space with nothing going on. So, oh, Hope's there. Hi, Hope. Hi, baby girl. Don't mind me, I'm talking to a dog, and in my crazy head, I think that she can see me and hear me, so. She knows my voice, right? How could you not? I'm loud and obnoxious. Hope was a dog we had here for a little while, and she's in a wonderful foster home right now, although between me and you guys out there, I'm hoping it's a foster failure, because she's doing amazing and her foster mom is working miracles with her. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, so the socialization issues from down here to up north are a little different just because the environment's different. And it's never too late to socialize. Socializing an older dog may take a little time, and you probably need to go slow, especially if it's a large, athletic, capable breed that doesn't have any social skills. That could come across very scary to people. And that's where, again, we have to go slow. This is where we don't want to do nothing, but when we're doing things, we go slow. Think about, is the dog overwhelmed in any situation you are starting to expose her or him to? That's kind of the rule of thumb here. That'll be the theme for tonight. Do stuff, but use common sense, don't overwhelm. Okay. So getting back to this, Patricia also comments on the abuse and neglect issues. So the abuse and neglect can go two ways, okay? The abuse and neglect, you could have a dog that is a flight risk and opts for space and distance. You can also have a dog that experiences anxiety from their previous abuse and neglect with a little more assertive behavior, which, again, that's an individual dog thing. Most times with the abuse and neglect, I think we usually see, especially if they're put into a foster home, they're usually the types of dogs that are a little more like, whoa, what's going on, right? And this is where we tend to be overly loving and encouraging for the dog, which certainly can come in handy. The only thing I could say with absolute certainty when it comes to abuse or neglect, and I tell people this all the time, the best thing that you can do for that dog's future is to forget about their past, okay? And I say this all the time. And we're not burying what happened to them if we know what happened to them, because it's important if we know what happened to them. That would certainly help us help the dog going forward. but you can't live in what happened to the dog in their previous life. The best way to help that dog overcome is to help them acclimate to their new home, their new environment, whether it's foster or adopter, right? Because you're going to be providing them with consistent food, love, structure, daily mini training sessions, walks, love, right? That's what's going to help them overcome their past abuse or neglect, right? Conditioning works both ways. Anxious dogs or dogs that experienced abuse or neglect, their behaviors have been conditioned by their past. Well, guess what? Their future is conditioned by you. That's the beautiful thing, right? And dogs live here and now. The fact that you have an anxious dog because it was abused or neglected in the past, right? That is contributing to the behavior you are currently seeing, right? As soon as we start changing the human's interaction with the dog and the environment that the dog is in, their behavior starts to change and new conditioning takes place. Make sense? And there's no time for that. Some dogs overcome very quickly. I've seen, obviously I worked with a lot of pits, and whether they come from fighting rings or just abuse and neglect, some of them, it's like you can't believe how happy they are. It's like they've never been harmed in their entire life, but the scars, and you could see the physical scars, you know darn well that they've been through some shit. And they're just like, yeah, whatever, I love you. And then you have some that you can clearly see that not just the physical scars are there, but the emotional and residual effects of what they went through is certainly impacting them. So yeah, again, an individual dog thing. But again, the best thing you could do for them is to provide them with a good, a consistent schedule, some structure, some play, some stimulation via walks or daily training or recreational chew treats or puzzle toys, all things like that, right? Think about it. Have you ever been like really stressed out and you're like, damn, I got to get busy. I got to do something to get my mind off of this. I mean, especially now with the stupid coronavirus crap. I mean, luckily I've had a lot of crap to do because I have a lot of dogs here. But, I've been blowing off a task that I've had to do, and I said, and I got sucked into the gloom and doom on TV, and I said, let me go outside. So I was outside for an hour. I had a couple of dogs out with me, and I was doing I was putting in a window in the new kennel building I have here. And you know what? For an hour, that's what I was preoccupied with. So recreational chews, puzzle toys, that preoccupies dogs too. It keeps their mind occupied, especially if they're anxious. Chewing is really beneficial, right? And yeah, running and walking and all that stuff is helpful, but chewing is absolutely a really effective means to help dogs deal with anxiety, among calming treats, CBD oil, essential oils, things along those lines, which we're not going to get too crazy about tonight, but calming music as well. Playing calming music in that dog's safe, cushy place is also a really good thing. And does the calming music help? I don't know. I think on some dogs it does, and I think on some dogs it doesn't, but I play it anyway. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm offering a little more calmness to their life. So I don't know. It's one of those things that I do it anyway. So let me just take a peek here. Angela, constantly trying to get people to understand that using their past as an excuse doesn't help them move forward. Yeah, I mean, and I hate to say this, but people who are stuck on the dog's past, a lot of times they're stuck in their own pasts as well. And helping a homeless animal sometimes helps them overcome that as well. Because dogs are here and now. They are always here and now. They're not even 10 seconds ago. They're right here, right now. In fact, there's that old saying: if you catch a dog doing something wrong, you have 30 seconds to correct it. No, you don't. 30 seconds later, they're on to 18 other things, right? If the dog's jumping on the counter, you got to go get the dog off the counter, right? If you want to capture a good behavior, you have 10 seconds to capture that behavior. No, you don't. No, you don't. You capture the behavior when it happens, okay? That's how dogs learn, and that's how dogs retain. Very important, because if you're constantly capturing behaviors, the dog's constantly learning. And it goes back to one of my favorite things to say: repetition creates reliability. So keep that in mind. Anyway, let's take a peek here. Did I miss anything else? Wendy May, you can share link. Oh, how come when I type the address for this video to text to my fosters? Oh, yeah, Tony. So, yeah, the video will be available on Facebook after we're done. And I also make a copy of it. I actually have my YouTube camera up there. So it'll be on my YouTube channel as well, because some people prefer to watch videos on YouTube as opposed to Facebook. So I try to get these on both platforms. So they will be available, Tony, and this could be shared. So, and if you look up above in the comments, I posted a link to my decompression video on my YouTube channel. So, all right, what else we got here? Trish, Whiskey needs a boatload of chew toys. Yeah, Whiskey, you know what he needs? He needs like a motorcycle tire. And you know what we got to do, Trish? We got to set up Whiskey with a spring pole. And a spring pole is an exercise contraption for dogs that like to bite and hold on to stuff. So anyway, I digress. All right, so what else do we have here, according to Decompression? Okay, so Steve had a whole list of stuff here, and I can tell you right now, I don't know if you're still on, Steve, but I'm going to have Steve on my YouTube channel. We're going to do a one-on-one because he does have a lot of questions here, but let me see what he has going on here. Okay, so how should foster dogs be safely introduced to the existing pack, which is very common and a very important aspect of decompression and getting dogs to acclimate to a new environment. It's also very difficult for me to talk about virtually without knowing all the dogs involved. So if I tread a little lightly, I apologize, but I can't offer things that I might do with any dog to, the average foster home, because that would be irresponsible of me. Like trainers, like I go fast. I mean, I talk fast, I walk fast, I train fast, right? I want to get dogs working, I want to get them walking. I mean, this is just who I am. And then, I have one of my best friends, she's also a dog trainer. We share a lot of similar beliefs, and our approaches are very similar, but the pace at which we implement them is vastly different. She's more finesse and slower, and I just go fast. So I mean, anyway. I think you get the idea. I'm talking fast, so I'm Jersey. What do you want me to tell you? I'm from Jersey. I talk fast. I walk fast. I order my coffee fast. Yeah, coffee. I said it. That was interesting when I first moved down here. My Starbucks orders, I had to slow down when I ordered because they didn't know what the hell I was saying because I talked too fast. Anyway, I'll shut up. On to the next thing. I'm having fun. I don't know if I'm boring you guys, but at least I'm talking to somebody. When I do these YouTube videos, it's just me talking to a camera, so at least I have some concrete evidence that there's actually people looking back at me. All right, so the foster dog introduction. So we have the happy-go-lucky dog, and we have a happy-go-lucky, let's call it a pack. I'm not going to get into the whole pack thing, okay? But let's say we have the happy-go-lucky pack in the adopter or foster's home. New dog comes in, and there's usually no issues, right? That can happen. My personal approach would be that that's right, Kathy, Jersey in the house. When you bring the new dog home, the best thing to do is to introduce the dogs on neutral territory, okay? And that's right, Kathy, coffee, mother, father, that's how you say it. When you introduce dogs, let me define neutral territory, okay? Because I see it all the time. Say, oh, we introduced the dogs, down the block. Okay, well, have the resident dogs ever been down the block? Well, yeah, we walk them there all the time. That's not neutral territory. Or we brought them to the park. Have your dogs ever been to that park? Yes, we take them there a lot. That's not neutral territory. Neutral territory is a place where none of the dogs have ever been. That is the best and optimum way to get the dogs exposed to each other for the first time. Sometimes that's not always feasible. I get that. Sometimes we have no choice but to put the resident dogs away, bring the new dog in, put the new dog in their safe space, their safe cushy space, and then we can let the other dogs out. It happens sometimes. Sometimes we have no choice, especially if the dog's coming off transport and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're exhausted. You want to go to bed too. So the best thing to do is hold that off for another day. But provided we have friendly dogs, we should still follow that neutral territory thing. It's the best and safest way to go about it. And the best way to do that is to walk. I hate to say walk again, but that's the best way to do it. And remember, we may not be introducing this new dog right away, because although we want to do stuff and we don't want to wait, we still have to consider that could be an overwhelming experience for the new dog. It could be an overwhelming experience for the resident dogs. Maybe they get super excited and anxious when new animals come in the house. There is that possibility. It may not be aggressive, but anxiety or overstimulation could contribute to a meet and greet inside the home not going so well. So neutral territory is generally the rule of thumb. If that can't happen, and I don't like to use leashes, but sometimes we have to because we have no choice. Using a leash to introduce dogs is certainly, another approach. And keep in mind, when you are exposing the dogs to each other for the first time, eliminate all resources or potential things that the dogs can have conflict over. So don't have any toys, bones, treats on the floor. Maybe remove dog beds, right? Because a dog bed can be a resource that maybe one of the resident dogs doesn't want the new dog going on. Try to make the space as clean and neat as possible. Little slippers, socks, think outside the box. Anything that the dog might perceive as something to play with or investigate, we want to eliminate that from the equation, because if conflict arises and there's all this stuff around, what caused the conflict? We may not know. So if we eliminate all those variables, it gives us a better idea if conflict arises, or as they progress and develop their relationship. Then once we start adding a toy to the equation, again, we gather more information. Again, do this piecemeal, step by step, slowly. Sorry, I gotta get a swig of water. If you're bringing a dog in that has a known history of being socially deficient, and what I mean by that is not necessarily aggressive, but if the dog is a jumper or is an in-your-face kind of anxious social greeter towards other dogs, if you know that, and you know that the resident dogs, they don't accept that kind of interaction readily, again, food for thought. Safety is always a thing. That's the thing with dog-dog interactions. Safety is always the issue. Now, if you're adopting a dog, then obviously you have a different mindset. You want the dogs to get along, but you're adopting the dog, you're committed to the dog. Maybe you could take a little more time. If you're fostering the dog, the resident dogs and the foster dog, them getting along may not even be a necessity. They just may need to coexist. You may need to have the foster dog in the crate where the resident dogs accept their presence. That could be your goal as well. So there's situations where they don't necessarily have to get along, but they do have to be able to coexist in the presence of one another. If you have a dog that's potentially aggressive, whether it's the resident dog or the new foster or adoptive dog, I'm not even going to broach the subject, because you really should have a local professional help you with that situation. And it's a good segue to Stephen's next question, which I'm not even going to talk about in depth, is should a fight break out, how not to get bitten, thus saving the foster dog from a bite record, which is very important. So if we know beforehand if a dog is anxious, socially deficient, or potentially aggressive, that needs to be our priority, is safety, right? We need to have the dogs or the environment set up in such a way that the dogs cannot get to each other, at least for the foreseeable future, until you gather more information, develop a relationship with the new dog. But fights break out, fights happen, okay? And again, I'm hard-pressed to even say anything, because if you do it wrong, you could get bit and you can get hurt, and the foster dog can have a bite record like Stephen said, and a lot of stuff could go south. I could tell you the proper way to break up a dog fight is ideally 2 dogs, 2 people present, where you grab them by the hind quarters where the belly meets the legs, and you pick them up and pull them back. So you're almost lifting their rear off the ground and pulling them towards you. So if the dogs are locked, for instance, a lot of times that will get them out of that conflict. Not always. I can tell you right now, when you do that, almost always the dog is going to whip around and target whatever picked her or him up. Sometimes the dog is very aware that it's you by the time they turn around, and sometimes they're not, and you get a bite. We're not supposed to grab the collar, right? That's rule number one. Never grab fighting dogs by collars because you get bit. And I can tell you, we all do it. We've all done it. We sometimes you just react and you're just grabbing collars and you're getting bit and crap happens. And fortunately, I've gone out of those things relatively unscathed. I mean, usually the most severe bites that I've gotten were dealing with, training clients one-on-one where, the crap hit the fan. But breaking up dog fights in a home, I mean, whistles, loud noises, these are some hands-off things you can do. Getting a doggy gate and just cramming it between them. That's another way to do it. And you can't say it's cruel. You can't say you might hurt them. You just can't. Because let's say that you cram a gate down between them and you break up the fight and you save serious injury, but now the dogs are afraid of gates for the foreseeable future. So what? I mean, would you rather have a dog mauled or have a dog afraid of a dog gate? So chairs sometimes help. So, it depends on the dog. If you're outside, even if you're inside, a squirt bottle may help. Probably not, though, because that adrenaline when dogs are in full fight, they're not going to feel much. That's why you may need to escalate your physical involvement based on how intense the fight is. Some dogs, they just spar, where it looks bad, it sounds bad, teeth baring, they never even touch each other. So you have that part of it too. So, and I can't say don't overreact, because once that starts, no matter how good we are, sometimes we overreact and it happens, right? So, nothing you can do about it. If you're outside and you're staging a meet and greet with a resident dog and a new dog, that's the best way to go about it, right? On leash. If you feel like they're getting along a little, you should have a hose ready. Have that hose ready. Have it set on stream. That's another, again, also in addition to the whistle or a blowhorn, some kind of loud noise that may disconnect them from fighting or may not. I mean, if anyone has seen two pit bulls fight, ain't a whole lot that gets them apart other than a brake stick. And I won't even get into brake sticks because that's, if you don't know what a brake stick is, then you shouldn't use one, because that's, you have to be extremely comfortable using it. It takes a lot of practice using it. You have to know exactly where to place it in the dog's mouth and crank the mouth open. And so anyway, but yeah, so the fights, they can happen. Hopefully they're not severe. And again, if you have a dog of that level, your best bet is to get a local professional to help you with that interaction and the meet and greets with the resident dog or dogs and the new coming dog. And again, if it's a foster situation and the dog is animal intolerant, I mean, and depending on the rescue, I can't speak for all rescues, but your job as a foster may just be, do all the stuff we're talking about, but no animal interaction. So safety, right? Keeping the dog safe and secure while you're getting it acclimated to your environment and preparing it for its adoptive home whenever that happens. Okay. Steve also asked safely securing foster dogs so it doesn't get away from the foster parent. Yeah, a lot of dogs are huge flight risks, and I talked about it earlier, whether it's a martingale, and make sure it's a properly fitted, high-quality martingale. Some of these cheap nylon martingales, which they're really limited slip collars, they're not even true martingales, they loosen up and the dog could slip right out of them. And the whole purpose of a martingale is for dogs that have no stop. Like greyhounds, right? Greyhounds have the stop is that cliff in the back of a dog's head. That's the stop. They don't have that, so I'm sorry. The slope of the nose is the stop where it comes down, and they have or you have dogs with the big fat necks that are bigger than the head, right? That's something where a martingale limited slip would come in, so the collar can't slip over. So if it's not fitted properly, it'll slip over. So those are helpful. I love I love slip leads, the ones with the locking mechanisms. Those are my favorite because you can really lock them in place right under the jawline, any breed. And they come in small sizes. They come in larger diameters for larger dogs. Mendota is one company that makes slip leads with locking mechanisms. The best slip lead I've seen with the best locking mechanism is Marine Dog. And I think it's marinedog.com. I'm not sure. And I'm not affiliated with them. I'm not even sure. I think they're still in business. You know what? Let me do something real quick here. Yep, it is marinedog.com. Let me copy this link for you guys. I mean, they use nautical rope, and their locking mechanisms are excellent. I've never had a slip lead of theirs loosen up with their locking mechanisms. So those are really good products. And again, I'm not affiliated with them. I don't get any commissions. I just really nice products. But yeah, so slip leads come in handy. And then, you know, people don't like it, but Star Mark collars, those are plastic pinch collars, and they come with a safety loop. And if you're not comfortable using that as a training or handling tool, that's fine. But when they're fitted properly, a dog cannot escape them. So that is something you might want to consider too. Again, not from a training standpoint, from a handling standpoint. So those are some things you can do, especially again that new dog acclimating to the new environment, maybe coming off transport, maybe coming out of a shelter. You don't know the dog's leash manners or capacity to walk on a leash or to deal with stressors while it's out in public. If they're flight risks, you don't want to. You lose that dog, you lose that dog. Dog's gone. Especially if it's down here, it's off in the woods. If it's up north, it's getting run over in all likelihood, right? If you're even the suburbs are pretty hectic up north. You know, the Midwest, and then we go out west. It depends on where you are, whether it's a city, suburb, or the country. You have different challenges if a dog gets away from you. And remember, if you're a foster, your first responsibility is safety. And how many times have we seen dogs? They get loose off transport. It sucks. I mean, it happens. And sometimes with the absolute best case scenario and the best handlers, sometimes you have a malfunction or some weird crap happens and the dog gets loose and it's gone. So secure handling tools are important. Those regular collars with the plastic snap buckles are not ideal. They break, they loosen, dogs slip out of them. Harnesses are not good if you have a flight risk. Dogs back out of harnesses all the time. There are some harnesses that are out there that are more secure. But as uncomfortable as it is to a dog, when I'm working with flight risk dogs, I prefer something that there's no way they're backing out of. And that's why I opt for the things that I've mentioned so far. So, and decompression overall, again, we don't want to do nothing. We want to get the dog working, get the dog, all the stuff I said. And once we get into a routine, you'd be surprised how the dogs, they settle down. They don't settle down by doing nothing. They don't settle down by us not exposing them to stuff. They don't settle down by us not walking them. They don't settle down by being locked in a room for 2 weeks with limited interaction. That's not how they settle down. Do they need that quiet time? Yes. That's not how they're going to acclimate to their environment. We want to get them working, get them on our schedule, structured daily training sessions, walking. And then, once the dog starts settling in, then we start exposing them to new environments. As their threshold and capacity to deal with stress and new social situations improves and their confidence improves, we add little things at a time. So, all right, let me get back here. Am I missing anybody? Okay. Oh, we got a couple of, Gen Z sitting there with a guilty face. Guilty, is that from breaking up a dog fight by the collar? Is that what that was? It's the only thing I can think of that I was talking about. Routine has been the most helpful things with Hope. So Hope I'm going to say was a feral dog because, she's, again, Gen Z's doing amazing things with Hope, but, routine and structure and doing the same thing every day is what's helped a dog like Hope. And she was an adult feral dog. And the other dogs in the household, I believe, have helped Hope as well, in addition to Gen Z's miracle work. And that you can't underestimate the value of think about the dog that expects to be abused or neglected. They're anticipating it. They know it's coming, right? Well, what if they expect and anticipate good stuff to happen and happen same time every day? Think about how quickly they can overcome whatever they've been through. And yeah, it's going to take longer for other dogs, but yeah, consistency, consistent behavior on our part promotes consistent behavior on the dog's part. So, I forgot I was about to read this. Okay, what else we got? And Stephen asked a couple of other things, which doesn't really relate. One was screening for potential foster parents. That's really an individual rescue thing that I'm not going to get into. Successful desensitization of the foster dog. I'm not sure what Stephen means by that. I'm guessing it goes in line with just decompression overall and the dog acclimating to its new environment. Each dog's an individual. I don't want to desensitize the dog to my environment. I want to acclimate the dog to my environment. I'm not changing. Think about it. If you're fostering or you're adopting a dog, let's assume that you are a dog lover and you have compassion and you love dogs and you want to play with them and train them and walk them and care for them and cuddle with them, right? Those are things actually that they may never have been exposed to. So we want to acclimate the dog, not desensitize the dog to, or work around the dog's anxieties. We want to help the dog through their anxieties. All right, I've had dogs that, and I actually learned this from my brother, 29, almost 30 years ago, our family's first pit bull. And it was great. And I've used this many times and suggested it many times, and it works. His dog, when his rabies and ID tag would clank on the water bowl, he would stop drinking. He freaked him out because the dog was likely abused. So conventional wisdom, right, would say, well, let's take the collar off when the dog drinks, right? Which had to happen sometimes, but actually started feeding him in the same type of bowl. So the clanking and the eating, right? The dog was desensitized to the clanking because he wanted to eat. Again, that's just a superficial example of a dog being desensitized to something as opposed to being acclimated to something, which you could probably argue they're the same thing, but we don't want to change especially if we have a great, loving, consistent routine, we don't want to change that for the dog. We want the dog to come into that, and that'll help the dog get desensitized to whatever. When it comes to, again, overwhelming social situations, that's where baby steps comes in. Where, if cars are a problem for the dog, that's where we need to desensitize the dog to cars. Where maybe we go to a quiet road and walk past parked cars first. And then maybe we introduce the dog to a very low traffic street, etc. Then we're desensitizing the dog to that potential threat in the dog's mind. Okay. Carolyn was asking about separation anxiety for a deaf pup. That'll be hard to get into tonight, and we're coming up on an hour. I don't want to go too far, but I don't look at deaf dogs any different than I do dogs that have all of their senses. The way I communicate with them may be different with hand signals and whatnot. But separation anxiety is separation anxiety. The fact that the dog is deaf, again, I don't know the dog, so I'm just speaking generally. The fact that the dog is deaf is irrelevant to me because the dog has separation anxiety. I mean, I see more dogs that have their hearing and separation anxiety than I do deaf dogs and separation anxiety because there's less deaf dogs. It's that simple, right? So, of course, I'm going to see fewer of them, but separation anxiety is separation anxiety. I can tell you this, the best thing, especially if you're first starting to work with a dog with separation anxiety, the crate and the type of crate you're using is the most important, because you have to have a crate that the dog cannot escape, and if the dog tries to escape, cannot hurt her himself trying to escape. That's why those steel gorilla cages by Pro Select, you probably see them on like Amazon for $180. They're not the ones I'm talking about. The Pro Select Empire cages are like $600. Those are, and they're not full. I forget the name of the crates. Impact crates. Those really like solid steel things. They're not that bad. They're open crates, but I've had some serious dogs come through just in the past since we've been down here. Hundreds of dogs come through here. I had one that bent the bars, and that was a 95-pound American Bulldog mix, 2 years old, a brick shithouse, strong as hell, severe separation anxiety, and he bent one of the bars. All the other pits and crazy dogs I've had come through here, they've all been secure and safe in those cages. So a secure crate is the most important thing for separation anxiety. And then a few superficial things. Recreational chews, puzzle toys. You could try CBD oil, calming treats, essential oils, calming music, all that stuff could certainly help. And I could tell you with separation anxiety, be careful you're not inadvertently rewarding anxiety. The anxious dog, and we're like, it's okay, it's okay. General rule of thumb there, especially when the dog is first coming into the house, ignore crazy and reward calm, right? And I think that's day one of my 7-day dog care challenge that I mentioned earlier. We don't want to inadvertently reward states of mind or behaviors that we don't want to perpetuate. So if the dog is barking and whining in the crate, we got to ignore it. Don't look at them, don't talk to them, don't present yourself to them. Completely ignore it until they're quiet. When they're quiet, you let them out, right? Kind of like crate training or housebreaking, right? We want to reward the good and ignore the bad, because you don't want to correct the dog with separation anxiety. That could contribute more anxiety to the dog's state of mind. So ignoring is the best bet. But a secure location is number one for separation anxiety. And maybe I'll do a live again on separation anxiety and go a little more in detail, but hopefully those are some suggestions. Okay, Kristen asked about other household pets, which we talked about earlier with the dog-on-dog intros. We also have dog-on-cat intros. Some people have hamsters and parrots, cats, bunnies, you name it. This is where if you're getting a dog that, for instance, we have 5 parrots. Okay, because when I have rescue dogs come here for my enrichment program, I have places where, the dogs, where their kennels are, but as part of their enrichment, I bring them inside the house so I can gather information to see how they are in a household environment. And, I have to be careful because, first of all, if I'm working with a skittish dog, I can tell you right now, 9 out of 10 times, my macaw screams at the top of his lungs. You know what I mean? That's an expression. He squawks like you wouldn't believe and scares the crap out of the dog. But then I have the other dogs who have a lot of high prey drive. So I have to be careful introducing them to the parrots. So they're usually on leash at first until they don't have access to them. I have it closed off. We have our own bird room, but you can still see right through. And the birds, you can hear the birds down the block. So it's not like I could, stifle their squawking. So I do that slowly with a leash. And and I also have a cat intro video on my YouTube channel as well. I'll try and find that after I'm done here and pop it in the comments below. But introducing to any animal, it's not just about the incoming dog, but how does the resident animal respond to the incoming dog? Cats are tough, and I can tell you the first question people ask, how is the dog with cats? And you got to ask, how is the cat with dogs? Okay, and anyone who's ever been to our old shop up in Jersey, I still have Steel. He's down here with us, but we had Steel. He is our cat, but he used to stay at our shop up north, and we would have people come in with their dogs, and he was such a dick. He would hop on the dog food bags, wait for a dog to go by, and just swat the crap out of him. He was such a jerk, and he's still a jerk. But I use him here. He helps me out with dog introductions because he is kind of a jerk. But it gives me, I figure if dogs will be accepting of my jerk cat, they'll probably be accepting of a friendly cat. But I do that on leash, and I make sure by the time I do that, the dog I'm introducing, the obedience is pretty solid, right? The dog will sit on command, and if I have to use treats, I will. But the dog's obedience is solid. Our relationship is solid. The dog looks to me for direction in different situations, right? So we work up to that point. So if the two animals don't hit it right off, it's okay. Take your time, take it slow. If your relationship with the foster dog or your new adopted dog is solid, everything else is going to be a lot easier to address. Okay, I know we're getting close here. So, all right, Angela, favorite topic that we preach, but for whatever reason, some people need to hear it from a professional because they don't think we know what we're talking about. I would like to hear you speak to the fact that leadership still has to begin the second a new dog enters. Decompression does not equal free for all. It just means slowly introducing new elements. And, that's kind of what we've been talking about. She's right. And again, it's an individual dog thing. Sometimes we have that happy-go-lucky, goofy dog. Just throw them anywhere and it'll be fine with anyone. I do want to address one thing, and I maybe I'll upset some foster homes, but you need to hear this, okay? Rescues don't tell you stuff just because they like to hear themselves talk, okay? And maybe some rescue people are not dog trainers, and maybe they haven't been dog training for a long time like I have, or like people that you know, or maybe they're not veterinarians, okay? But they know their dogs, and they know their business, okay? Rescue is a business. These people know what they're talking about. If they tell you to do something, friggin' do it. I mean, it's really not that hard. If we tell you that you have to eliminate access to a certain area of the house because it could cause conflict, and you ignore that, and conflict arises and a dog or a person gets hurt, I'm sorry, that's your fault. That's not the rescue's fault. They're giving you guidance, and a lot of times, especially if the dog has been in rescue for a while and has been in a foster home, the rescue has a lot of information, right? Remember earlier I had mentioned if a dog is coming out of a shelter, the rescue relies on you to provide them with information because they don't have any on the dog. Well, guess what? If they have information on the dog and they're giving that to you, please accept that information. They're not just telling you that for the hell of it. They're telling that to help you help the dog, right? And, I apologize if I get a little emotional, but it happens in training too. You ask any trainer, any dog trainer, what their biggest issue is, and it doesn't matter what part of the spectrum a dog trainer falls on, whether it's a balance trainer or an operant conditioning trainer or a holistic trainer or a force-free trainer or a traditional trainer. We all have the same biggest challenge, and that is owner compliance, okay? Owner compliance is the biggest issue with dog training, and it's the biggest issue in rescue as well when we find really good, loving foster homes. And I can tell you, the rescues I deal with, they appreciate you. They really do. They need more foster homes. But they don't need foster homes that are going to put dogs in a position to fail. And when you don't listen to them, that's exactly what you're doing. Okay, so I don't want to go on too much of a rampage here, but and I can tell you when it comes to rescue, a lot of times, more than you think, the rescue knows more about that dog than any professional can tell you. I'm telling you. It's the way it is. So they don't need, you don't need to necessarily be a dog trainer to understand a specific dog and the environment that a specific dog needs and the rules of the rules you need to implement for that particular dog. Trust the rescue. They know what the hell they're talking about. And some don't, but that's a whole nother conversation. And you know what? Again, we go back to sometimes they provide you with information and new behaviors crop up. And that's where you got to have that back and forth. You got to have that communication. Have that open dialogue. Forget about us, right? It's all about the dogs. If you're fostering for a reputable rescue, you contact them with a problem, they're going to help you through it. They want you to succeed, right? You succeed, the dog succeeds. The dog gets a home. Bottom line. All right, enough of that. What else we got here? I think that was it. You know what? I think I might have one more thing here. Let me just take a quick peek. Okay, I think that was it. Yeah, you know, just keep in mind one thing before we conclude. There's no, and I mentioned this, I opened up with this. There is no formula for decompression, right? It's not an exact formula. It is based on a case-by-case basis, an individual dog thing. The bottom line is this. When you hear that word decompression, and there was a meme going around the internet, you know, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, right? Best of intentions that meme got floated around, right? Throw it away. Get it out of your mind. I'm telling you right now, it means absolutely nothing, and I'll tell you why. 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, it may work for some dogs, but not for every dog. Some dog might take a day, might take a week, might take a month. And while that meme is appropriate because it lets people know, look, dogs need time. That's the purpose of it. I'm not bashing that meme. It does have value, but you see I'm being a little sarcastic here. The bottom line is trust what the dog is telling you, right? And don't do nothing. Get the dog exposed in little tiny bit increments as you feel the dog can progress and be exposed to different social situations, okay? What you don't want to do is you don't want to take a dog off a 14-hour transport, take it into your home with your other animals, have 64 family members come over to meet him as he gets off transport, throw him in a bath before he goes to bed, cram him in a place he's never been before with other animals, wake up the next morning and take him to the dog park. After that, go to Home Depot. After that, go to the groomer. You don't want to do that to a dog in the first 24 hours, okay? Stability, structure, scheduling, and then all the, love and all that stuff. Yeah, that all comes into play, but don't overwhelm socially, and overwhelm is an individual dog thing. Get the dog on a good schedule, your schedule. Expose them, train them, walk them, all that stuff. And when in doubt, if you're fostering, reach out to the rescue for help. If you adopted and you're a little overwhelmed with the progress of the dog, reach out to a local trainer that can help you through the process. So I went over a little bit here, but we also got started a little late because I had some technical difficulties. Anyway, I'm just going to take a quick peek here. I don't think I missed anyone. If I did, I apologize. Just PM me afterwards. And then again, this whole coronavirus crap, I hope everyone is following the social distancing guidelines and you all are safe and your family is safe. And I guess we got to hang in there a little longer, right? So thank you all for joining, and any questions or whatever, PM me, comment below, whatever. And again, don't forget about my YouTube channel. I posted a couple of links below, and actually, let me, bear with me real quick. Let me just pull this up so I could pop this in the comments below. I do have a lot of info on my YouTube channel as well, and if there's content that's not up there that you'd like to see up there, let me know, and I'll make some videos about it. Otherwise, stay safe, everyone, and I'll do another live real soon, and thank you for joining.